know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you? I don't want to be rude, but you have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day. When you yourself, Mr. Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I could applaud you for having a sense of humour. Yes, I want you sacked, Mr. Schultz, as well. I want you all fired.
Nigel Farage.
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 The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively to LBC.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and welcome everybody to the first Nigel Farage Show, exclusively live here on LBC. I'm going to be with you Monday through Thursday, every single week. Well, after the big shocks of 2016, 2017 promises to be pretty exciting too. Here, in the USA, and across the whole of Europe too. And I will be leading Britain's conversation with this show from all over the world. Theresa May is going to publish her plans for Brexit in the coming weeks, but is she playing her cards too close to her chest? Would you like to see a little bit more vision from the Prime Minister in terms of where we're going to end up? So whether you're a Remainer or a Brexiteer, I want to hear from you here on LBC. To get involved, you can call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text me on 84850. You can tweet me at LBC with the hashtag Farage on LBC, and you can watch this show on Facebook Live by going to lbc.co.uk or to LBC's Facebook page now. Well, yesterday was Mrs May's first big interview of the year, and as ever, her tone, her manner was reassuring, and there were some words there that Believe voters would have thought, well, that's pretty good. She said, we're leaving the EU. It was rather like saying Brexit means Brexit all those months ago. But on our relationship with the European Union's single market, on 3 separate occasions, she declined to answer. And yet, she left people with the impression that, yes, we would be leaving the single market. And yet today, when she was questioned by Tom Newton-Dunn from The Sun, she said that we need to operate within the single market, appearing to contradict what she said yesterday. I think the Prime Minister is keeping her cards too close to her chest. I think we need a much clearer vision on where we're going. And OK, you may say, but she was tough, Nigel, on immigration. She sounded really good on that and made it clear that was why people had voted to leave. Well, yes, but didn't we hear all this before when she was Home Secretary? Didn't we from 2010, at every Tory party conference, have this tub-thumping speech, and yet immigration figures at the end of her 6 years were running at record levels? So I want to know, if you're a Leave voter, were you reassured by what you heard from the Prime Minister yesterday and today? And if you're a Remain voter and you believe in the European Union cause, do you still cling on to the hope that perhaps we'll finish up inside the single market, or rather like Norway, in the European Economic Area? Either way, this issue is going to dominate politics throughout 2017. So please, call me now, text, tweet, get involved, because this show is all about you. Do you want a clearer vision from Mrs May about what Brexit really means? And without more ado, I will ask that question to Sarah in Clapham. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Hello. What do you think? Do you think Theresa May's sending us in the right direction?
I think so. I think that she's done a great job so far. I don't think she's keeping her cards too close to her chest. I think that people that want her to come out and, you know, say exactly what she wants to do and what direction she wants to go in at the cost of getting the best deal in the Brexit negotiations, I just don't think that makes sense myself.
OK, so you're saying she shouldn't give away her negotiating hand, and I do absolutely understand the logic of that argument. But Sarah, when you say she's doing a great job, in terms of Brexit, I mean, it's now 7 months since we had that vote. What has she actually done? When I say I think she's doing a good job, I mean she has had so much stick
for not putting statements out there and not giving away her position and what her objectives are. And I think that some people might have felt pressured to release some information or let people know, what direction we're going in. And I think that the fact that she's taken it all and she's, I think she's playing her hand well.
Did you vote for Brexit, Sarah?
I did.
You did? So you're happy that 7 months on, nothing very much has happened, and that we're waiting for a Supreme Court judgment, and we've got the European Commission trying to dictate timetables. I mean, all I'm saying to you is, shouldn't she be a little bit more decisive about this?
I think whatever Theresa May came out and said, I think, people like yourself are pushing her to sort of say what she wants to do. Whatever she said, you can't please everyone, and people would be picking it apart. She would have to keep coming out and justifying what she said and clarifying what she said, when really all of her energy is better used in negotiating the best deal for the country. I think that people need to give her the chance and get behind her and support her. It's not an easy job she's got.
Well, Sarah, I take your point of view, and I was one of those people. I was, I didn't particularly want her to become Prime Minister, but it did all sound so good in those early weeks that I was prepared to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm just beginning to feel slightly frustrated that month after month goes by without sufficient action. But you're satisfied.
Well,
you're satisfied.
When you say sufficient action,
yeah.
If you're doing a deal or if you're, trying to buy something or sell something, are you usually the first person to name the price, or are you the sort of man that says, give me your best price?
No, I agree with you. She has a negotiating hand. All I'm saying, Sarah, is the only difference between us is I'd like to know what the ultimate end goal of this is. And I think, particularly on the single market yesterday, she was very, very unclear. But Sarah, thank you very much indeed. You are the first caller to the Nigel Farage Show, and thank you. And texts and tweets coming in. A tweet here: if we don't leave the single market, Brexit is pointless. We're a maritime nation who've made our own destiny in the past. We'll do so again. That's in from Will Saunders. And our second caller this evening is Pip, who is calling from Waltham Cross in Hertfordshire. Pip, do you trust the Prime Minister? Is she giving you the vision that you want?
Oh dear, no. I voted Brexit, and I'm becoming increasingly dismayed with Miss May, with what I see as her spectacular failure to launch. She went up for this job. She's got no excuse, and frankly, if it was me, I would have hit Article 50 on Monday morning and would have said to the world, my country, new rules, and everything is up for grabs. And the biggest mistake of all is not putting the single market out there. And what compounded for me was hearing that guy, that self-serving Tory donor, who said quite clearly about his 2 factories with his 2 lots of 200 employees, most of whom were foreign-made, because he actually said British people are too stupid or too lazy to be trained. So this guy expects Britain to subsidise his workforce, provide the housing, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, the open door of Europe is what it's about. The single market, if that has to go, so be it.
But Pip, Pip, are you saying that you think Theresa May is being influenced perhaps by Tory party donors?
I think she's just a chronic procrastinator and is too fearful. And I think actually she's made a very nice career just sliding through.
Okay.
But Theresa, you took the job.
Well, Pip, I get your point of view very clearly. I'm going to ask you to stay there a second, because I've got Tony on from Canary Wharf, who takes a very different point of view. Tony, tell us what you think Mrs. May is doing that is right.
Can I just first of all like to say one little thing aside?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you are where you are today, and I think you've achieved a lot, and you've changed world history, to be honest.
Well, you're very sweet, Tony, but you're very sweet, but that's not the question right now. Is Theresa May getting this right?
I think I agree with the other person on the line. I'm not a Tory, I'm a socialist, but I do think she has to do a little bit more. But at the same time, if you could link this with the Donald Trump story, if she gives a blow-by-blow account of every step she's going to take, it will be like the previous caller said, torn apart, ripped apart, belittled. So, I think it's good she's not saying anything. And at the end of the day, I'm happy it's a woman, to be honest. I'm really happy, because I think a woman is more capable of dealing with the people she has to deal with than somebody who responds to everything that they attack.
Well, Tony, I couldn't care less whether it's a woman or a man, but I just want to see that Brexit actually happens. But no, Tony, you think she's playing a clever game. Pip, how do you respond to that? Tony thinks she's playing a really clever game and keeping her cards close to her chest is the right thing. How do you respond to that?
Well, perhaps it's just me and I'm just much more snippy, but I think it just gives the others, internationally and at home, that she just doesn't look very brave, and it doesn't. I don't actually think she has the confidence of the conviction of what she's supposed to. I don't think she's got the guts to actually go.
Well, we're going to find out in full time. Pip, Tony, thank you both very much indeed. A tweet coming in here. It's not the plan that needs confirming, it's the objective. The PM should confirm what we want in the end from this. Jim from Titchfield. I have to say, Jim, that's very much my position. Do you want a clear revision from the Prime Minister on Brexit? You're listening to Nigel Farage on LBC exclusively. It's 7:15.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
The Prime Minister appears to be holding her cards very close to her chest. Is that the clever way of playing it, or do you want a clearer vision from the Prime Minister on Brexit? I certainly do. A tweet that's come in here during the break that amuses me. Hi, Nigel. Listening to you in a car with three Ramonas who aren't exactly enjoying the show as much as I am. I voted leave and ideally would like an EFTA-type deal, but not looking promising that it'll happen. That comes from Mike. And I said to you at the start of the programme that you can watch the show on Facebook Live by going to lbc.co.uk or to LBC's Facebook page, and we're getting a load of messages piling in here. Cam Salcido says people have no clue how complex leaving the European Union, let alone the single market, will be. Paul Wilkinson says if the Tories don't go through with a democratic decision of the people, the UKIP vote in the next election will be massive. Brandon Wolfe says Theresa May not. Once again, we have a leader of this country that we have not voted for. And Nigel Stevenson says the proof is in the pudding. Look at the NHS, for God's sake. She hasn't got a clue, neither do the Tories. Well, at the moment, a majority of you are being critical. But I want to hear from any of you. There may well be many of you out there who voted Brexit and think she's pursuing the right course. There may be some of you out there who voted Remain who think, actually, she's probably going to get us out of the European Union, but give us a Norwegian-type deal, which is actually what we really want. I wonder what Max in Reading makes of all of this. Max, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. It's the first time I've spoken to you, actually, on LBC. I'm a Leave voter, and
yes.
I actually don't have an issue with how she's playing it. I think the clouded, misguided way of doing it before invoking Article 50, until she knows that once the Supreme Court decision comes back, I think she should keep her cards very close to the chest, because I think she'll pull it off. I think the EU needs us more than we need it, and I think that I have faith in her that she'll sit there at the negotiating table straight after invoking Article 50, and she'll lay the cards out, and I think everyone will get to see what she's got in store. But I think before you know what the Supreme Court say, I think it'd be very silly to do that. You wouldn't do it in a business deal, so we're not selling ourselves as much. I think we need to make the EU sell themselves as well.
Max, I get all of that. And in terms of economic logic, of course, you're absolutely right. They sell us very much more than we sell them. And there was a very interesting comment the other week by the Bavarian finance minister saying how concerned they were about the economic impact of Brexit, not on Britain, but on Bavaria, because they sell us an awful lot of motor cars. I get that. I guess my problem, Max, is, by the time Article 50 gets triggered, it will have been over 9 months gestation since we had the referendum vote. And I feel, Max, that we're just waiting too long. But you're happy with that, are you?
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. And again, I've always wanted to leave the EU. And had I had my choice, I probably would have invoked it the day after it happened. But looking at it in hindsight, actually, I think that it's a monumental political decision. As you know, 2016 was full of those, and Donald Trump over the pond as well, which I'm, again, in favour of. And I think that it's going to be if we're going to be the first country to leave, we need to nail it and get it right. And I think actually taking our time, possibly now a bit too long, but if she'd invoked it around just before Christmas, maybe, it would have been enough time to get all your civil servants in place, all your negotiators. You don't want to rush it. If you invoke it the next day, then you look like you're jumping the gun a little bit. And I think if she doesn't do it in March, then we'll have a serious issue, I think.
Okay, so, Max, you're a more patient man than I am, but you've given her a deadline of March, and we'll absolutely make sure. And in March, whether she does or does not trigger Article 50, we'll get you back on to see how you're feeling about it. And thank you very much indeed for the call. And just to show how international LBC now is, our next caller is Richard, and he's calling from the Philippines. Richard, hello.
Hi, Nigel. Hi, Nigel. How are you?
What time is it there?
It's 20 past 3.
20 past
3 in the morning.
Very good. Right, so you're like Donald Trump. You're one of these people that stays up all night and comments on things.
Absolutely. I'll be sending some tweets out later.
Very good. So, Richard, what do you make of May's positioning on this? Is she giving us the kind of vision that we deserve?
Well, look, I think she's stacking her cards, to go into a negotiation as hard as she can. To seem to be serious about she'll pull out if she doesn't, to try and push as much as she can get. What I would like to see is less of the delay. I mean, I run a call centre out here in the Philippines.
Yep.
The decline in the pound has been dramatic for me. The costs have gone through the roof. I'm looking at 20% costs across the board increase because my revenue is in pounds and I pay wages and costs in a foreign currency. So, I've had a massive impact to my business, and I didn't hedge it either. What I would like to see, I voted Remain, but I am a Democrat, and I was born into a democracy, and I respect the fact that we've got the result and we're leaving the EU. What I don't want is delay after delay after delay. What I need is to know where the currency is going to be. And it keeps moving. May makes a comment yesterday. The pound slips another 1% today. If she keeps on doing this, and she keeps on saying, next month, or in March, 6 months after, then it really is screwing it up for business leaders all around the world and in the UK.
Well, Richard,
don't know where we are.
Richard, on the currency point, just to be fair, the declining market in sterling actually started in July 2014, a fact that seems to have been forgotten. We had a significant fall in sterling before the referendum even kicked off. Now, obviously, with a roughly 20% fall over the course of 2015, there are winners and losers with this.
Absolutely,
and you're paying the price. But I have to tell you, I've been going back and forth to America quite a lot for various reasons in the last few months, and I've been a lot of very happy exporters on the plane.
Sure.
I mean, clearly, if we have political certainty, that doesn't guarantee market certainty, but it does make it that much more likely. Richard, I'm with you.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it put in the hands of a team of business leaders from across the European Union. And I'd like to see them come forward with recommendations because business leaders move faster than politicians. Business leaders can come forward and say, they're going to be pragmatic. The egos are not going to get involved. They're going to look at the numbers and they're going to come forward with a proposal that makes sense for the UK and makes sense for the EU.
I agree.
It's right. We've got the power in this negotiation because we buy more off them than they do. It would be a disaster for them if they don't do as a single market type deal, if not leave us in the single
economic
market.
Logic, Richard, economic logic suggests you're absolutely right. I'm suggesting, and by the way, it's good to hear somebody who voted for Remain but accepts the Democratic result. My problem is, does Mrs May herself... is she playing a very clever game by keeping these cards close, or does she actually know herself what she wants? I mean, I'm told by people I should respect her because she backed Remain but was really a Brexiteer. So on the biggest democratic decision of our lifetimes, we're told she played that game in a clever way. If that game was clever, I'm not quite sure what this game is either. Richard, long distance, thank you. Carla in Peterborough. Carla, good evening. What do you think of Mrs May's timetable and her vision?
I think it is an absolute joke, Nigel. Honestly, I do not understand why Article 50 has not been triggered yet. At the end of the day, our MPs, they are paid to serve the British public, right?
Yeah.
So why have they not done it? Why has it not been done at the end of the day?
Well,
it should have been done. They're acting like our masters right now instead of ones that serve.
Well, Carla, the argument, Carla, is that David Cameron, as Prime Minister, and George Osborne as Chancellor, didn't contemplate they could ever lose the referendum, and therefore no Plan B was in place.
There was no plan at all, Nigel. They never thought. They thought it was going to go all their way and they was going to carry on their gravy train, as you say, and they thought, yes, we was going to go for Remain. They didn't expect this. And that's not the fault of our government. So really, we should be really having a government in charge who was on the side. We should have a UKIP government, really, with you leading the negotiations, Nigel, because I'm sure you've got a vision for the UK.
I see, Carla, I think we're getting obsessed here with process and timetables. And I do understand that some of this is complicated, but all I want to see is some vision. Carla, let me ask you very quickly, as a Leave voter, do you think Mrs May is going to deliver the kind of exit that you voted for?
Well, she voted for Remain, didn't she? So, I mean to say,
but she's the Prime Minister. You voted Brexit. Do you think you're going to get what you voted for?
No, I don't, because there's all this up and down questions of, we stay in the single market.
I know.
I knew when I was voting Leave, I knew that we was coming out of the single market. Yeah. I knew this.
No, well, Carla, we all knew this, but I think you're reflecting a growing frustration amongst many people who voted for Brexit and don't really see it happening. And very quickly, we go to Jason in Kensington. Jason, what is your argument on this?
It's just very, very simple. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Mr. Farage.
Not at all.
I would actually stipulate that I think Theresa May is doing the best she can in the circumstances, because nobody's actually yet addressed what's going to happen to 70% of the UK market, which is professional services, legal, financial, accountancy. Now, that's a big chunk, and it's usually unmeasured, and it is export services. You know very well, as I do, you've got foreign bodies investing in the UK because of its position with the EU. Emerging markets law is dictated by English law, which has been privileged to obviously as being a centre of arbitration within the EU. 70% of the economy derives from those services, which I believe was your old favourite friend, Mrs. Thatcher, that set up the UK government to be in this position. Now that we're outside of the EU, no one's actually addressed what's going to happen to those services? What's going to happen to the lovely people in the city?
Jason, you're right. We have a big reliance on the service sector, in particular in financial services. But remember, Europe is only one market. We are part of a global market, and I am frustrated we're not hearing more about the world. I would like, as part of the clearer vision from the Prime Minister, to hear more about our global future. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC. It's time for the news with Rupert Bhatia. Do you want a clearer vision from our Prime Minister about what Brexit really means and when it's going to happen? Are you running out of patience? Or are you perhaps one of those Remainers that really doesn't want us to leave and quietly you're thinking, this is going pretty well. We're going to finish up rather like Norway. Well, lots of opinion here, and Judith Kinsman on Facebook says the pound is plummeting. Brexiteers, you will find your standard of living will be adversely affected by Brexit. You have been fooled. And it would seem Farage on LBC is a big hit in Canada. Oh, well, there we are. I'm not quite sure how the two of those relate. What I like here, a tweet that's come in here. Nigel, I reckon Theresa May's Brexit plans will be as good as Cameron's renegotiations were. And that comes in from Cheeky Latte. But a very interesting comment that has come in here on Facebook from John Sexton, who says, is it not better May waits for the French and German elections? Now, John, I don't know whether that's your name or whether this is perhaps Nick Clegg using a pseudonym or Lord Mandelson. Who knows? It could even be Jean-Claude Juncker. Because let me just tell you, one of the reasons I am so frustrated that Article 50 was not triggered in the middle of last year. Let me tell you what happens. We trigger Article 50 in March, perhaps towards the end of March. At the April summit, Theresa May goes to Brussels to say, I want to talk about Brexit. We can't talk about that. We've got the first round of the French presidential elections. Have you seen this Le Pen woman looks like she might win the first round? Oh, OK, says Mrs May. If it's that urgent, I'll come back next month. So she goes back in May and she'll be told, but we've now got the second round of the French elections. And it looks like our man might win, but there's actually a chance that the French National Front could take the presidency of France, and it'll be a disaster. And after that, well, of course, in July and August, most of Europe closes down. But then it'll be OK, because in September our Prime Minister will go back to be told, no, 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 Mrs Merkel now has the fight of her life on our hands, and I am worried that we will get delay because of what is going on in Europe, and that's without any crisis in the Eurozone. And if you look at the state of the Italian banks, that's not impossible, or without further anger in Italy and countries like that when it comes to the migrant crisis. So I am deeply frustrated, and I begin to think that this could be quite a difficult year for some of you who are getting frustrated already. People like Vicky Timmins on Facebook, who says, been patient for 7 months, patience sorely being tested. May thinks the EU will fail first. That would just be great. Well, it would solve Mrs May's problem if the European Union fell to pieces this year, but I don't think that is the basis on her delaying. I'm going to ask John in Barnstable. Do you think you're getting a clear vision from the Prime Minister, John?
No, not really. But my beef is this. The Lisbon Treaty was discussed in the House of Commons, yes?
Yes.
Why wasn't Article 50 sorted out then, with all the politicians there?
Because, John, in those days, there was virtually nobody, in fact, just a handful of MPs in the House of Commons who even wanted to campaign for Brexit or thought it was a reality.
I know that. But this is democratically elected MPs.
Yep.
They're supposed to be thinking of everything, right? Because they're wise people. They're lawyers, they're solicitors.
Yeah. Well, they might be well educated, John. Whether they're wise is a very different point. And from my experience of them, very few of them are streetwise. So, John, you know, they could have discussed Article 50 at the time. They didn't. Nobody ever thought it was actually going to happen. I wonder what Joe from Crystal Palace makes of all this. Joe, good evening.
Hello there, Nigel. Yes, nice to meet you, mate. Just sort of, it's a privilege, obviously, to to speak to you, and especially with the way that you've got Donald Trump's here. It's pretty amazing, really. I must say, many of your policies I do agree with. Many things that I don't.
Well,
actually.
But what about my increasing frustration with the Prime Minister's lack of vision and this whole thing? It seems to me taking rather a long time.
Well, I think ultimately Theresa May stuck between a rock and a hard place. She didn't bargain on being in this position, in 2015 when the Tory government won an overwhelming majority. Everyone thought, and I think possibly even yourself, that David Cameron would still be the Prime Minister now. So she's got a position which, is very unenviable. Frankly, and I don't mean to be disparaging about the Prime Minister on national radio, but she's one of the most evasive people that I've ever heard in my entire life. She doesn't have a clear position on anything.
No.
Now, me personally, I don't believe leaving the single market is a particularly wise idea for the United Kingdom. Now, I know that you fundamentally disagree with that.
But Joe, that is what we voted for, isn't it?
To be honest, I think that's open to interpretation. I mean, the question that was put to the British public was, would you like to leave the European Union or there or thereabouts?
Yeah.
There was no specifics with regards to whether we stay in the European Union, whether we keep a model which is like the Norwegians have, or Switzerland, or so on and so forth. I mean, if you look at other countries within Europe that are completely outside of the common market, they're the likes of, Belarus, Serbia, Russia. They're still technically within Europe, or at least their country is.
Yeah, but Joe, come on. Switzerland and Norway are outside the European Union, have their own separate arrangements. With Norway, it's a halfway house. Switzerland are completely out, and they are the two richest countries in Europe.
But they still have freedom of movement on the most part. I know that the Swiss are trying to renegotiate a deal. All I'm saying, I don't know your background, but I believe you used to work in the city. I think so much, not even I think, it's a fact, so much of the tax revenues of the British Treasury takes in comes from the city. And if we were to take Britain out of the single market and its competitiveness, there is an argument that a huge amount of business is going to leave the country, and a poorer Britain doesn't serve anyone. That's going to play right into the hands of the left, and people like Jeremy Corbyn are going to get traction off the back of that.
Joe, I get your passion. I understand why you're making the arguments you're making, but with respect, Joe, we had these arguments during the referendum, and every leading player on both the Remain side and the Leave side made absolutely clear, every single big player made absolutely clear that a vote to leave the EU was a vote to leave the single market. But I will at the top of the hour, at the end of this show, tell you what I really think about all of this. But I wonder what Catherine in Dallas, Texas, makes of all of this. Catherine, hello.
Hi, Nigel. I'm sitting here listening across the pond thinking if I was British and if I was a Brexiter, I would be very angry. I would want results and a timetable, the leader to say, okay, this is what to expect by this date. And if she's not communicating, then people are going to get frustrated. She might be waiting to see when Obama leaves office and, things change over here.
What I want, Catherine, even more than a timetable, what I want is a vision. I want to know where, we've just had the most dramatic vote of any of our political lifetimes. It's big stuff. Brexit is big stuff. And I want to know what our destination is,
Well, whether you like Trump or not, he was very clear about his vision, and that's why he beat the Bush dynasty and all of that. I mean, it was a game changer for us. And we were watching your election in huge disbelief, and I'm for it. I think Britain deserves better. But
no, so do I, Catherine, and you're quite right. Trump, whether you like it or not, Trump is clear. He's going to close the border with Mexico. He's going to get rid of all the climate change legislation, and he's going to do everything he can to put people back to work in blue-collar jobs. Catherine, some people hate Trump, hate what he stands for, but you're right. At least there is clarity with what he stands for. And Catherine, I thank you very much for your call. I wonder what Matthew at Heathrow thinks of Mrs May keeping her cards so close to her chest.
Hi, Nigel. Yeah, I'm a Remainer, and I was a Conservative voter, but I basically think Theresa May is not really keeping her cards to her chest because she hasn't got a clue what's highlighted when the ambassador resigned last week. And basically, I think that there's two things what she should do is, number one, because, the Conservative, they was to remain, and they lost.
Were you a Remainer because that's what Mr Cameron wanted?
No, I was a Remainer because I think we've been working within Europe with the single market for over 20 years, 30 years now, and we've got so much close relations. We've got to keep a relationship there. But I think now we're in the corner. I accept that we've got to leave, but I think Theresa May has got to get all the people from the other parties what was voting to Brexit, and it's got to be sort of a team of people discussing it together.
So you would agree, Matthew, that there is a lack of clarity here, yeah?
Yeah, I think she hasn't got a clue. But I think the important thing is that the second thing, what she should do is, whether it's herself or whether she's got to get our MEP to basically to try to change Europe while we're still in it. Because I think that other countries have got the same issues about...
I think the crises, Matthew, within the European Union are really too great for them to listen much to the British. By the way, you were a Remainer, but do you now accept the result and think we should get on with it?
Yeah, well, I think we should get on with it, but triggering an Article 50 is going to be the time bomb. I've been travelling around Europe, and everyone is sort of saying, as soon as we trigger that Article 50, they're not going to negotiate. They just want to fine us.
Well, you may be right, and we may have to make it clear at some point, Matthew, that if they don't play ball, we will walk away from the table. Do you want a clearer vision from the Prime Minister on Brexit? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:45. Are we getting vision and clarity from our Prime Minister about Brexit? Well, there was some confusion after yesterday's interview. So today, she tried to clear the matter up when she was asked about the single market. Will we be leaving? Will we be staying? And this is what she said. She said, we will be outside the European Union, and therefore we will be negotiating a new relationship across not just trading, but other areas with the European Union. So is that clear to everybody? Or, like me, do you think, frankly, it reads like gobbledygook, and we're no closer to knowing whether the Prime Minister herself knows what she really wants? And a text in from Paul in Cornwall. Evening, Nigel. It's clear from what I've seen as a leaver that we're staying in the single market, and May will do a partial deal on immigration. Nigel, it's going to be a phantom Brexit. Sheila Ellison on Facebook says, do we need a UK form of draining the swamp of civil servants who are working against the people's wishes? And Jamie Chambers says, Theresa is useless, sorry, but the EU have made it clear there is no tariff-free access to the market without free movement of people. Well, Jamie, if you're right, we could be about to waste 2 years of our lives negotiating something that they're not going to give us. And that is that will be a genuine worry as time goes on. But our next caller is Chris in Manchester. Chris, good evening. Do you think we're getting a clear vision from the Prime Minister?
I don't really, Nigel, but that's not exactly why I phoned up to discuss.
Isn't it?
I wanted to ask you a question, actually.
Oh, go on.
I just want to know how you feel about the way you've led kind of the working class and the least well-off people in this country to vote for something that is ultimately going to be very bad for them, especially in light of the devaluation of the pound. I mean, that's, the instant effects of that is that the people who are on the lowest incomes are going to have to pay more for the things that matter, things like filling your car up, food. Obviously, that's not something that's going to affect you, but all these people it is going to affect, and you're the one who's convinced them to vote for this.
Well, hopefully, Chris, there'll be more of them in work, because what is happening is actually very, very good news for UK manufacturing. The figures since Brexit have been excellent, and that is being reflected across the board. Indeed, all the scare stories. One of the things we were told, Chris...
It doesn't matter if they're in work if they're earning a pittance, so does it, Nigel?
Well,
like I said, you're not going to be affected by the price.
And by controlling...
20%, are you?
Chris, by controlling open door, completely unregulated, free flow of unskilled and semi-skilled labour, there is a genuine chance of the marketplace paying them more for what they're doing.
But that's not what happened yet, is it, though? That's not what happened.
Well, actually, Chris...
We've seen that the pound's value has plummeted significantly.
Actually,
and as
Chris...
a result, things are going up in price.
Actually, Chris, let me tell you what's happened since Brexit. In political terms, nothing. Absolutely
Can I say
nothing.
something else, Nigel, though? When we voted to leave, I was working for a manufacturing company, and we bought a lot of chemicals from abroad, and within 1-2 weeks we got messages from all our suppliers saying they had no alternative to put the price up by 15-20% of everything. So the ultimate knock-on effect of that is that price of everything goes up that we're manufacturing. Our shareholders aren't going to take that hit.
Do you know, Chris...
The company still needs to be profitable.
Do you know, Chris, during the 1980s...
Those products that get hit.
During the 1980s and much of the 1990s, Germany had a very strong Deutschmark that went up year on year on year, appreciated hugely against all their trading partners across the rest of the world. It made, of course, the cost of many things go up. And do you know what happened to German industry and German manufacturing? It adapted to that by becoming more competitive. It adapted to that by using new technology. Businesses adapt to changing circumstances. And I'm quite sure if the pound had gone up, we'd be told it was all the fault of Brexit. Chris, all I would say to you is that all the people telling us that terrible doom would befall this country, it simply hasn't happened. And the fall in the pound, and I repeat this because it's important, the fall in the pound started in July 2014. The graphs and charts on it are completely clear. And Chris, no, I do not feel guilty about duping people into anything. I hope and believe I was as absolutely open and dead honest as I could be, not just in the referendum campaign, but in the previous 25 years. But I wonder what George in Walthamstow makes of Mrs May, the vision or lack of it. George, good evening.
Good evening. I don't have a problem with it, Nigel. In fact, I welcome it. I like her fussing about. And I would disagree with your analysis about the procrastinations that might come about with the French presidential election and then Merkel and so on. My view is bring it on. I want that delay. My concern is that Theresa May will come up with some kind of custom union, single market compromise. Instead of having this racehorse that we want, we're going to end up with a camel. Now, I'd be quite happy for the 2 years to be exhausted, get to the end and get into World Trade Organization rules. Because I think that the way back to a single market from there is a lot more difficult than, having an agreement in the 2 years.
But, George, if you think that at the end of this 2 years we're not going to agree with the European Union and that we're going to have to resort to World Trade Organization rules, isn't there an argument that we need to make that case pretty quickly after Article 50 has been triggered?
I don't think that is a realistic negotiating position. I don't think there's any credibility in somebody turning around and saying, you know what, I'm going to let 2 years go by and we'll end up with WTO rules. I don't think there's any credibility in that, as much as I would like it.
Well, I guess in a sense, if there is no deal with the European Union, it is WTO rules that we will fall back on. Those rules that we're told would be a complete disaster. It's quite interesting. There was a comment piece by John Longworth today, and John Longworth, resigned his job, with a big business organisation to fight the Brexit cause. And John makes the point today that under WTO rules, the total tariffs we would pay would actually be half of our current net contribution. So British goods would be charged £5 billion of the tariffs. EU goods coming to Britain would be charged about £12 billion. So there's nothing really to fear here, George, either way, is there?
Well, no, absolutely. That's my point.
Yeah.
I mean, many of us Brexiteers, we're coming from the position that you need to look at the opportunity cost of being in Europe. It's absolutely massive. It would far outweigh any of the benefits if we just got into taking care of those opportunities with the United States, with China, with Brazil, with Turkey, with Russia, with blah, blah, blah.
George, there's a big world out there. I agree with you. There's a big world out there, and I shall say more about that in just a moment. But first, I'm going to go to Robert in Willesden Green.
Hello, Nigel.
Hello there. What do you make of all this?
Well, I think all this talk about the timing of the announcement of the plan is all a bit silly, really. If you had 9 months to prepare for Brexit, which is quite a complicated thing, you would spend 7 months talking to people, gathering ideas, talking to trade associations, foreign dignitaries, etc., etc. In the last 2 months, you'd start to put together options, and in the final 2 weeks, you would have the plan. But you wouldn't have it at the beginning, and you wouldn't have it at the middle.
Well, Robert, excuse my frustration with this, and perhaps it's because I spent 20 years in the private sector before getting involved in politics. I've always believed, time is money, and in the private sector it is. Do you honestly think if this was a private company, trying to reshape its position in the globe, they would spend up to 7 months sitting around the table talking and building a team? They do it in half the time, a third of the time, surely.
Well, it's rather more complicated than a single firm looking at some single problem, isn't it? This is a very complex problem, or it could be a complex problem. I hope it won't be, because if we go to WTO rules, it actually could be quite simple. But I think first of all, you've got to put the team together.
Yep.
Then you've got so many differing opinions, trade organisations. You've got the different nations within Britain.
I mean, no, Robert, I understand. I understand there's a lot to do. I mean, I absolutely get that. I just fear that we're now running into the election timetable across the rest of Europe. Robert, I thank you for the call. And I thank all of you for your calls, your tweets, your texts. My final thought on this is that I never wanted a Remainer to become Prime Minister anyway. I did give her the benefit of the doubt, but 7 months is simply too long. Nothing has happened during that period of time. Absolutely nothing. And I think The Economist magazine have got their front cover this week absolutely right. It is Theresa May. I don't want to know every detail of her negotiating position, but I do want to know what the actual vision is. And the bit that worries me even more is that in the last 2 days, when America was mentioned, she said we must build on those relationships. The point about Brexit is that it's liberating. It is giving us massive opportunities. This country needs to go global, starting with Trump's administration that comes into office next week. We need to be building trade associations, links right across the world. I honestly don't see that this Prime Minister has got the energy, the excitement or the flair to do it. I'm worried, and I fear a very frustrating 2017. I have to say, I've enjoyed this evening. I hope that you have too. I'll be back here later on, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.
Today, and if you're a Remain voter and you believe in the European Union cause, do you still cling on to the hope that perhaps we'll finish up inside the single market, or rather like Norway, in the European Economic Area? Either way, this issue is going to dominate politics throughout 2017. So please, call me now, text, tweet, get involved, because this show is all about you. Do you want a clearer vision from Mrs May about what Brexit really means. And without more ado, I will ask that question to Sarah in Clapham. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Hello. What do you think? Do you think Theresa May's sending us in the right direction?
I think so. I think that she's done a great job so far. I don't think she's keeping her cards too close to her chest. I think that people that want her to come out and, you know, say exactly what she wants to do and what direction she wants to go in at the cost of getting the best deal in the Brexit negotiations, I just don't think that makes sense myself.
OK, so you're saying she shouldn't give away her negotiating hand, and I do absolutely understand the logic of that argument. But Sarah, when you say she's doing a great job, in terms of Brexit, I mean, it's now 7 months since we had that vote. What has she actually done?
When I say I think she's doing a good job, I mean she has had so much stick for not putting statements out there and not giving away her position and what her objectives are. And I think that some people might have felt pressured to release some information or let people know, you know, what direction we're going.
Involved, you can call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text me on 84850. You can tweet me at LBC with the hashtag Farage on LBC, and you can watch this show on Facebook Live by going to lbc.co.uk or to LBC's Facebook page now. Well, yesterday was Mrs May's first big interview of the year, and as ever, her tone, her manner was reassuring, and there were some words there that Believe voters would have thought, well, that's pretty good. She said, we're leaving the EU. It was rather like saying Brexit means Brexit all those months ago. But on our relationship with the European Union's single market, on 3 separate occasions, she declined to answer. And yet, she left people with the impression that, yes, we would be leaving the single market. And yet today, when she was questioned by Tom Newton-Dunn from The Sun, she said that we need to operate within the single market, appearing to contradict what she said yesterday. I think the Prime Minister is keeping her cards too close to her chest. I think we need a much clearer vision on where we're going. And OK, you may say, but she was tough, Nigel, on immigration. She sounded really good on that and made it clear that was why people had voted to leave. Well, yes, but didn't we hear all this before when she was Home Secretary? Didn't we from 2010, at every Tory party conference, have this tub-thumping speech, and yet immigration figures at the end of her 6 years were running at record levels? So I want to know, if you're a Leave voter, were you reassured by what you heard from the Prime Minister yesterday?
And I think that the fact that she's taken it all and she's, I think she's playing her hand well.
Did you vote for Brexit, Sarah?
I did.
You did? So you're happy that 7 months on, nothing very much has happened, and that we're waiting for a Supreme Court judgment, and we've got the European Commission trying to dictate timetables? I mean, all I'm saying to you is, shouldn't she be a little bit more decisive about this?
I think whatever Theresa May came out and said, I think, people like yourself are pushing her to sort of say what she wants to do. Whatever she said, you can't please everyone, and people would be picking it apart. She would have to keep coming out and justifying what she said and clarifying what she said, when really all of her energy is better used in negotiating the best deal for the country. I think that people need to give her the chance and get behind her and support her. It's not an easy job she's got.
Well, Sarah, I take your point of view, and I was one of those people. I was, I didn't particularly want her to become Prime Minister, but it did all sound so good in those early weeks that I was prepared to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm just beginning to feel slightly frustrated that month after month goes by without sufficient action. But you're satisfied.
Well,
you're satisfied.
When you say sufficient action,
yeah.
If you're doing a deal or if you're, trying to buy something or sell something, are you usually the first person to name the price, or are you the sort of man that says, give me your best price?
No, I agree with you. She has a negotiating hand. All I'm saying, Sarah, is the only difference between us is I'd like to know what the ultimate end goal of this is. And I think
Isn't it funny? When I came here 17 years ago and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
I don't want to be rude, but you have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day.
When you yourself, Mr. Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I could applaud you for having a sense of humour.
Yes, I want you sacked, Mr. Schultz, as well. I want you all fired.
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage.
The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively to LBC.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and welcome everybody to the first Nigel Farage Show, exclusively live here on LBC. I'm going to be with you Monday through Thursday, every single week. Well, after the big shocks of 2016, 2017 promises to be pretty exciting too. Here, in the USA, and across the whole of Europe too. And I will be leading Britain's conversation with this show from all over the world. Theresa May is going to publish her plans for Brexit in the coming weeks, but is she playing her cards too close to her chest? Would you like to see a little bit more vision from the Prime Minister in terms of where we're going to end up? So whether you're a Remainer or a Brexiteer, I want to hear from you here on LBC. To get in quickly on the single market yesterday, she was very, very unclear. But Sarah, thank you very much indeed. You are the first caller to the Nigel Farage Show, and thank you. And texts and tweets coming in. A tweet here: if we don't leave the single market, Brexit is pointless. We're a maritime nation who've made our own destiny in the past. We'll do so again. That's in from Will Saunders. And our second caller this evening is Pip, who is calling from Waltham Cross in Hertfordshire. Pip, do you trust the Prime Minister? Is she giving you the vision that you want?
Oh dear, no. I voted Brexit, and I'm becoming increasingly dismayed with Miss May, with what I see as her spectacular failure to launch. She went up for this job. She's got no excuse, and frankly, if it was me, I would have hit Article 50 on Monday morning and would have said to the world, my country, new rules, and everything is up for grabs. And the biggest mistake of all is not putting the single market out there. And what compounded for me was hearing that guy, that self-serving Tory donor, who said quite clearly about his two factories with his two lots of 200 employees, most of whom were foreign-made, because he actually said British people are too stupid or too lazy to be trained. So this guy expects Britain to subsidise his workforce, provide the housing, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, the open door of Europe is what it's about. The single market, if that has to go, so be it.
But Pip, I mean, Pip, are you saying that you think Theresa May is being influenced perhaps by Tory party donors?
I think she's just a chronic procrastinator and is too fearful. And